Hey everyone, I'm Cate Cammarata. I'm subbing in for Bob Ost today. And thank you, Jay, for managing all of this and doing all that you personally do here for TRU. I'm the literary manager for TRU, and I'm happy to host this Friday gathering with my guests, my good friends, Melissa Bell, Neal Rubinstein, and Patrick Blake. So Neal and Patrick are also TRU board members. So we've all been associated with for a very long time. Melissa, I don't know how long you've been a member, but I think I originally met you. And I've been the literary manager now for 10 years, if you can believe that. So TRU is near and dear to all of our hearts. During the pandemic, I was able to expand Create Theater, which I had already formed in 2016, to work with playwrights on Zoom. We were on Zoom before everybody else was, apparently. So we were able to launch our Zoom readings just because I needed to take care of readers, and it was a give get. My mentor philosophically is Ellen Stewart Lamont, and I never had a garage on the Lower East Side, but I sure did have a Zoom room. So, and I also had a number of talented writers, of which Melissa was one. And she actually was the first one to say that she was game to do a Zoom reading. So I think we actually did the very first one in March 2020. It was the week after everything shut down. So then we moved back into the world, and that's where we are right now. So that's why I think it's a good time now that the pandemic is officially over. That's what they say. To kind of take a reassessment, because we went through an humongous change, societal change, theatrical change, every other kind of change. And I think since I have an MFA in dramaturgy, it's sort of like I'm going to put that dramaturgical sense to use and just assess the environment and say, okay, this is where we were. This is what we went through. How is it now? So this is really the impetus for today. But I'd like Melissa to introduce herself, and then I'll ask Neal and Patrick to do the same. Go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, I'm Melissa Bell. I'm a playwright. I spend my time between the Catskills and New York City. I work a lot in the Catskills and have had a lot of success up here. And then as Cate said, I was her first Zoom reading. And jumped in and said, hey, I've got something. I had a reading that was canceled, table reading, and so let's try this. And it turned out to be very successful, which we'll talk about. I'm a playwright. I've written a show called Zoe Comes Home, which was recently produced in the Catskills and in New York City. My play Lady Capulet is a prequel to Romeo and Juliet, and that is being done by Barefoot Shakespeare at the end of July. And I work with Farm Arts Collective in Damascus, Pennsylvania, which is located on a farm. And we were featured in the New York Times in 2021 in their art section. So we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, you certainly do. Neal.
Okay, I'm a producer. I'm currently the co-producer of Grey House, starring Laurie Metcalf, which is getting some really good reviews now. And one show that we're just finishing up this weekend, the closing will be on Sunday. A lot of shows are closing Sunday. Is the Sign in Sidney Brustein's Window with Rachel Brosnahan and Oscar Isaac. I was kind of hoping they would extend it, but that didn't happen, even though we have the writer's strike. So oh well. And I'm really sorry, I have to say, I didn't get a chance to see Prima Facie, and I have a feeling I'm not going to have a chance to now, since it's closing on Sunday, as you said. So what else did I do? I'm currently involved in lead producer of a show called Sammy's Follies, which had a presentation of 54 Below a few weeks ago. And we're looking to bring it off Broadway. Also working on a show called Rife's Revolution, which I am hoping to turn into a major motion picture. So those are two of my projects that I am currently working on. And I was the former lead producer of a show called Dangerous that many of you heard of. So that's the other thing. And that's pretty much it. And as Cate knows, I have no filter. So if you ask me any questions, be prepared for a real answer.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to do this, Neal. I know you're really busy.
That's
Really
okay.
appreciate
And by
it.
the way, I've got to say, Melissa's show, Lady Capulet, is so great. It was excellent. This is something that I think is going to go far. Just thought I'd mention that. There you go.
There you go, Melissa. Free plug. I can't hear you.
Your mic's off, Melissa. You're on mute.
No. Oh, now I heard you.
Oh,
Is
well.
it
Talk.
on?
Yes. Okay. Finally, we have Patrick Blake, my comrade in arms all the way over in San Francisco. So I'm really glad that you're here with me, Pat. You're with me on stuff, I think.
I'm glad I was able to be here. Is my mic on? Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. So I'm a playwright. I'm a producer, member of the TRU board, and artistic director of Rhymes Over Beats, a hip hop theater collective. And we had our first workshop of a play that we've been working on by the legendary rapper Master Ace. And we just did that beginning of the month, and we're now looking for investors to do it in London.
So I think, go ahead, Patrick.
So Sammy's Follies the same as Sammy's whatever Broadway?
Yes.
Bowery Follies. Did you
Yeah.
change the name?
Yeah, she did. She updated it. She's been working on this for quite a while, and it really is coming together. It still needs some work, but we're working on it, looking for theater. We're actually talking to the WIC down in Florida. And there are a few things that we have in the works for it. So
It's such a great story. The whole
it is.
the whole thing.
It really is, just so people know it's based on Sharon Barnett wrote the book Lyric Music. It's based on her father, so it's based on a true story, but it really reads more like 42nd Street. You know, people come from the middle of the country to the Big Apple to make it big, and fortunately, there's a happy ending in this. So there you go.
May all of us have happy endings.
Yes.
Testing mic, test mic.
So, each person here I asked to be on the panel because they have something significant in their own area of expertise that I think it's important to speak with them about. But let me just give you an overview. I'm going to share a chart briefly, just to start us off on where we were and what it currently is right now on Broadway, because that's the apex, right, of theater. So I'm going to share this for just a second. What you see here, I asked my assistant to compile or to find some charts and graphs, since we all love numbers, right? The Broadway season statistics from 2009 through the most recent season. So what you see here is the attendance seems to be almost up to where we were in 2017, 2018, almost. So of course, 2018, 2019 was even better. But so that's when they say that 88% of our audience sort of is back. I think that they're looking at these same numbers, percent capacity. You can see 88%. We're back to 52 weeks out of the year. Number of new productions is up. That can be good or bad. Things are making it to Broadway, but they're not necessarily staying on Broadway, which if you're an investor could present a problem. So this is where we are for an overview. Doesn't seem half bad, except where are these projects, these new productions coming from? They were seeded by the regionals, historically. And if you look right now, a snapshot provided by TCG, you see in the fiscal year 2021, you had a surplus, right? As opposed to a deficit. 2022, it was still manageable, but now what you see is that there's no surplus and the deficit is like at 60 million, so there is a lot of panic going on. And if you read, I'm gonna stop sharing. So if you read TCG and American theater and just the news, you're going to see what's reflected is the panic and the reassessment and reprioritization. And BAM just laid off 13% of their staff, or all over the country. Many nonprofits are having to reassess, lay people off, and it's a little dicey. So what does that mean for us? If we're in the room here, we're creating our own theater, we're creating our own shows, we're producing our shows. You're a producer, you're producing other vehicles, and where do we get the start, right? Right now, theaters regionally, kind of the pipeline is clogged. So if you look through history, there's always ways and workarounds. We just have to find it right now. And I think each of these people are finding it. And so that's why I asked them to come. So if then you take a look in New York, because that's the theater capital of the world, right? How is the sausage made here? In the 70s, it was off Broadway, all the excitement. It hasn't been that way in a long time. Off Broadway pretty much is something for the nonprofits to produce in, just because you're not going to fiscally recoup. Instead, you're going to market it and you're going to see what happens. Either you can license it or tour it, or maybe if you're lucky, it's going to move uptown, or maybe it could go into the major regionals or whatever. It's very, very fluid. But you do off Broadway, which I'm an off Broadway producer because I like that vibe. I like that slight, that risk to try to get it in front of a professional theater industry people and try to see where it goes. So it's for promotion, as I'm sure all of you already know. So if the regionals are backed up, off Broadway is in the nonprofits, the larger nonprofits. So where do we start? Where do we start? So I have seen success in 3 different areas. Locally, grassroots, like what Melissa's doing. In the festivals, like Create Theaters New Works Festival, we've been able to really double down and trying to get some traction. And I'm going to talk about that a bit with Neal Rubinstein, who is on our advisory board, along with Pat as well. But talk about our most recent New Works Festival. And then since I'm the the associate artistic director of Rhymes Over Beats and co-lead producer of The Falling Season, which is the hip hop musical that Pat has just referenced. We're taking that to London. And so I really think that experience that Pat's just gone through with our company is valuable. So let's start with Melissa.
Okay.
Melissa, you really
okay,
good
my mic
script.
is working now.
Start with really, really good scripts. And I think that's the basis of it. If your script is your product and you're a really good writer, the script works. How do you get to that point then to have the success that you've had?
Well, thanks, Cate. I think a lot of it came from that very first reading because I had a lot of doubts about the script myself. And when we had that very first reading on Zoom, and I got a really good reaction from those 50 people in that room, which actually really surprised me that we had 50 people. I realized that it was viable, and I changed the ending a bit and knew what I wanted to work on. But then when because of my work up in the Catskills, I was in a coffee shop and I ran into the theater events manager at the local arts association. And this arts association is quite big for Sullivan County. It does all of the funding, and it doles out the funding from the state of New York State for the area, and gives grants to all the local organizations. And he asked me, you know, how's Lady Capulet going? I said, great. And I said, good. And, you know, it wasn't right for their theater, but I said, I have something for you you might really like. And when he read it, he said he recognized it for the community as a really good thing. And he recognized people in the community who were like that. And then we brought in the community to be involved, since it was about a sculptor. We brought in artists from the community, and he cast it all, knowing people in this community, actors up here. We found a director up here, and I really worked with this arts organization to produce the show. Because, you know, I said, I don't have a theater company, but, you know, if you can produce it, we'll do it, you know, and so they did. And we had a really good turnout. It was amazing. And partially because we really reached out into the community of visual artists and asked them to participate and make a piece of art for the play itself. And they did, and then we used that in the set and gave them a ticket. And I think the word just went out through the community. We were at capacity. Okay.
I'm going to stop you for a second.
Yeah.
Because this was an amazing production. I went up to Narrowsburg, New York. And
Sort of. All you do is you go run around the street and go right on down.
Jay, can you
to,
mute?
We have places for 4 pizzas. Yeah, we're fine.
Pizza, yes, pizza.
For everybody.
I think I just muted them. Anyway, yeah, making me hungry. Anyway, because this was a community, it was a local arts council, right? So in her play, it's about a sculptor, and it was a piece of theater, but it involved all the local artists, visual artists, the craftsmen on this set with their work that was created locally. I think afterwards, didn't you have a raffle or something and sell off the set pieces? But the Chambers of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce was involved because one of the biggest laughs was real estate person who was lugging the real estate sign and plants on stage, and his big goofy face is like a big smile, call, you know, whoever. But it was truly a local community thing. And I think that's exactly where theater can succeed, because it gathers the entire community to tell the community stories. That's what I'm getting after. So go ahead. I just wanted to really highlight what you did. Let's gloss over it.
Yeah, and then they invited us back for Mental Health Month, because it did talk about depression, and so we had another successful run as well. So it was a success for the organization. Like, they were happy. It was a fiscal success and an artistic success for the organization, and that was really a great thing. And then we brought it down to New York, one performance.
Well, the script works. You have talented local performers who used to live in the city and went up, you know, during the pandemic. And it was truly a good script, and it starts on the page. And so you did your due diligence, and then the rest of the community just really backed you up. So you want to talk a little bit about Lady Capulet, since Neal brought it up?
Thank you. That's a prequel to Romeo and Juliet, and Barefoot Shakespeare has been working with me on that for quite a bit, since 2019 when we did it in Central Park. And then we came on your show again, Kate. We came on a Monday night reading, and there was like over 90 people in that reading, and it was such another great experience because again we had advanced it a bit and added some new things to it, and then that we did more virtual readings of that over the pandemic year, and then brought it up to Pennsylvania, and a couple other companies in other places did it. Barefoot Shakespeare does it in New York, and then it was done in New Hampshire, and then on Create Theater. So using Zoom to sort of get some momentum going and to really get and this community that we have through Cate's organization, it really helped to get it back on the road, get it back going when it got shut down by COVID. So we were then able to bring it up to Farm Arts Collective in Damascus and have like a 4-day workshop where we rehearsed it for 2 days and we had 2 performances. And again, we got to try out some new work on it. And then we brought it to New York City again for 1 day. That was where Neal saw it, and for a performance, a public performance. So that was made possible by a grant from the city corp.
It was also made possible, if I may interrupt, because you mentioned about pitch, that me talking about how to make pitches. Melissa had a pitch that got you interested immediately. She posed a question, and it happened to be with this one show. This is what caught my attention, and that was very important. So just why don't you throw the pitch so people will know this is why people got interested in it, because she knew how to get catch their attention immediately.
I said, do you know what caused the feud between the Montagues and the Capulets? Do you know?
That was her opening line. That's it.
Fine. Great show.
Shakespeare doesn't tell us, but Lady Capulet does.
Yeah.
Well, writing the show is the first thing, and then it's how to pitch it and how to promote it. So as a writer, you have to do both constantly. So I'm glad you brought up virtual, because Create Theater definitely found its legs during the pandemic. I met many of you because we were online. And I still think, and you and I have had these discussions, Melissa, that developmentally, Zoom is still good. It's good for the creation process. The writers groups, especially, one that you're in with Create Theater, ETC, really excellent as its own little cell where everyone trusts each other in the room to actually create and perfect the work with a bunch of people that you trust. Trust is huge. And then once you're ready to test it out, well, then you've got a whole community on Zoom. And then if you do want to, then on the end, I asked you to make sure that Zoe Comes Home, that you had a version virtually that I can send out, to show people, to make it interested, to get other producers interested in it. So you need the virtual on the beginning end, right, to test it out. And then once you have it in a theater, then this is new. It really wasn't in such demand before. If you do have that video, everybody expects a video these days. If you miss it, oh well, it's no longer ephemeral. You've got some kind of video so that people can catch up to for the next step. It's really essential now to have a video.
Yeah, we were.
Do you want to add something?
Yeah, we were really lucky to get a recording of it in the first performance. First performance is up at the Tustin Theater, so it's in the theater, with all of the artwork and the garbage and the everything on the stage, and by a really good videographer. There's so many great artists up here, so we got it by a really good videographer, and so we have a nice copy. So it is important for sure, for grants, for all kinds of things.
And so many artists have said all through the years that nothing gets done without a company. And I think it's because of the trust that you have with your other company members, that you feel safe enough to allow that creativity to happen, right? It's just constant interaction with people to build that trust. Trust is not easily won, and it's easily destroyed. So that's what I think is one of the things ETC is. Now, the reason why I only open my doors for a few weeks out of the entire year, because we concentrate on the work. I don't always want to be selling. I am not a salesman. I want to develop the work. I want to get to know all my writers one-on-one, read their work, and then we're just gonna, I don't want to constantly, what is it, ABS, always be,
Spelling.
I can't remember the acronym.
ABC, always be closing.
Always be closing. All right, so whatever, I don't want to do that. I want to work on the work. So that's why I only keep our doors open for a very short amount of time, so that you can come in, get used to everybody else, and just start creating already. So I think that's new. I think the importance on a community that you trust and you can actually create the work with is essential right now, because we're all been isolated. We need that human connection as artists and as people. And I found that to be really essential for me, and then essential for a lot of other writers that I know. Okay, we're going to move on to Neal, unless you have something that I forgot, Melissa. No?
Well,
Okay.
you probably said everything I wanted to say, so there you go. No.
Okay. I don't
no,
believe that for
it's-
1 second, not knowing you. Can I just give you for a second? All right, hold on, just hold that thought, Neal.
Okay.
So in our company, when people are ready to present their work on stage, because this is theater, that live element is a necessary component, right? We created the nonprofit through the TRU Create Theater New Works Festival. Now I know festival has a bad rep, but in 2022, we actually produced full productions, just like David Krakowski's. I know he's here in the audience. It was absolutely beautiful. So I know it cost a lot, but things were costing more as we headed toward production. And we did it at Theater Row on 42nd Street. So as we hired designers and technical people and started getting the shops down, you know, it just kept raising the cost more and more and more, because the limited resource, the limited technicians who've all moved, they had to eat too. The limited number of supplies from the whole materials chain was just starting to hit. Now it's even more expensive than it was then. I was really proud of the fact that even with all of the costs, we kept it down because we shared everything. And I still gave 83% of the ticketing revenue back to the writers where it belongs. So
Which is
this
unheard
year,
of.
which is unheard of. It's unheard of, but if you're trying to do it collaboratively as a company, like a company should, you know, in my estimation, we're all in this together, right?
No, I just said that because people should know that what you do is something that should be applauded. And the fact it's not, you know, that most people, it's not done, and they would find themselves paying a lot more money than they did working with ETC.
Well, thank
That's
you,
all.
Neal. It's all the intentionality. If you're the intention of a theater company, I just want to get the work up to promote it, right? If your intention is to make a lot of money for yourself, well, then you don't do that. Kind of, frankly.
You're in the wrong
Anyway,
business.
yeah. So you're in the wrong business. Now we're all producers because we're passionate about this art form called theater. And so then it's an art. Anyway, Neal has been on our advisory board, as is Melissa and Patrick. And Neal and Melissa both were adjudicators this year. In 2023, I just announced the awards. We had a reading series just because of the aforesaid cost. And I think that if you're testing the material, if you profile it, you can do a really good job creatively highlighting the script and what works as a reading. Now, DW was part of this, and she had a very successful reading
Freezing up there, Kate.
stage. So I think that this, so we're not talking, what? Am I not working?
You're freezing up.
Uh-oh.
You're freezing up.
Sorry about that. How about this? Is this better now? Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, bringing it up to the festival, because we're in New York, we're New Yorkers, we want to expose it to industry. So we did. And Neal, if you could just kind of talk about, some of the things that you and I talk privately all the time about bringing in your work to expose it to professionals on, off Broadway, and the value of the festival, particularly our festival, but and festivals in general, and then the awards that we actually gave, because you need something to capture. And Neal saying that this won an award has a lot of value because, you know your stuff. You've got multiple nominations for Tonys. You've got actual awards for Emmys. You know your stuff. So go ahead. Your turn.
Aren't you amazed how I don't move my lips at all and the words come out? No, the thing that's that should be obvious, but isn't sometimes, is that the most important thing for a writer or anyone involved with a production is you need feedback. And the feedback comes from an audience, not from you and maybe the director sitting there and going back and forth. Yes, initially you'll do that. You'll tweak here and there, but until you sit in front of a whole audience where you get butts in the seats, who will then let you know what works and what doesn't. And believe me, things you think were really good will bomb, and other things that you didn't think were great will be there. Oh, put this in or do that. That's where you learn. So that's one of the first tenets, and I think one of the most important reasons to do the festivals, the readings, anything like that, because you need that feedback. In terms of the festivals themselves, one of the downsides, I've been involved in a couple of festivals, and I've always said every producer should do at least one. I would never do another one, but it's an experience. And that is that the majority of them, and I will get to Cate's in a minute because it's not the same, most of them are basically because they do a lot of different, they're showing a lot of different things. You have to bring a abridged version of your show, usually anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. And if you've got a 2-hour show, that can be problematic. And to be able to do that and put your best foot forward in a small amount of time. And by the way, not only that, many of these, what happens is you have basically a maybe 20-minute load in and a 15-minute load out. So you're there, you're in, you're out. Everything is very, very bing, bang, boom. It's very hard to do. That's the downside. Now, one of the things that's good about Cate's, and it's not just Cate's, there are others, they are allowing full-blown productions. Very important. I think that's needed. It's not as easy to do because it takes a lot more time, and by virtue of that, you can't do as many. That's it. But it's something that you look for. In terms of awards or accolades, anytime, no matter where you are, no matter what festival you're in, and there are tons of festivals around the country for movies. There are, oh my God, I can't count how many. It does make a difference if you win something. It could be even just a minor award. It really helps promote the show, because when you are now pitching it to someone, we won an award for. It's very important. It does make a difference. Just a personal aside, I have 3 Emmys, along with a bunch of nominations. The awards were sitting in my office as doorstops for many years. What do I do with them? Okay, they gathered dust. And then when I started working in theater, and people said, well, what have you done in theater? I said, well, I watch a lot. I go. I had not really done anything yet. My background was mostly television and touching on film. And all of a sudden, those awards became very important. Oh, really? You want? Okay. It does make a difference. It gives you a credibility. That would be the good word. It gives you a credibility that you, as a new writer, and you'll forgive me, unknown in many cases, it will give you that credibility. So that's the importance of the awards when they're given, whether it be some sort of statue or a certificate or whatever. It's important, and it doesn't hurt, because also this will go, if it's a legitimate organization. Not only will you win, it'll be mentioned in the local trade news, just like ETC when the awards were announced this year. There was an article in, I think was it Theater Mania or Theater World? I forget which one it was.
Broadway World.
Okay, well there you go, and it had everybody in it, and it was great. It was excellent, and I think it does help propel. And I would encourage every one of you, whether you're a playwright or you are working on the show or whatever, use those. Those are tools that you should always use. Keep that in your arsenal. Record it, download it, and put it on your pitch deck always.
So
that's
I'm going
the
to
second
highlight a
thing.
couple of things that Neal just said, because it's all about what used to be as opposed to what's going to give you the most traction now. The ephemeralness of theater, you always needed that credibility, that proof that you have a good idea, that audiences resonated with it. Just as Neal said, when I first went to Neal's house, you had that glass case with all of your awards in it. That is impressive.
It was never
Is
there.
any-
They were hidden in the back until when someone's, you should put them out there. I said,
Yes,
and all of a
Yes.
sudden,
there it is. Absolutely. So therefore, it's more important than ever before now to have that credibility. In fact, that's one of the most important reasons to do a festival, to gather awards. And if they don't give out awards, gather quotes, capture the audience's reaction after they come out. And if you don't have like a video, get quotes, because now I'm telling the writers that I work with, lead with that. When you submit, and it has to be blind, lead with those quotes, lead with this award, because that then incites the reader, or if you're submitting to a theater, predisposes them to think favorably on your script even before they begin. So that's a little tip. All right.
also, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish.
The outside. No, go ahead, Neal.
Now, one of the other things that Cate touched on is the fact that, unlike if you go it alone and try to do a full-blown reading or a workshop, it will cost you money, especially in New York, where you're dealing with equity rules and 802 musicians rules. If it's a musical, it can cost, and it can cost big. And by doing this, it still won't be cheap, although the proper word is inexpensive. Never say cheap, inexpensive. It will still cost you money, but it won't be near what it would cost normally if you try to do it alone.
Right.
And that's where the community comes in, the collaboration comes in.
So people were really generous last year. So I was able to apply. If they were doing it on their own, they would have had to pay $2,000 more just for the space. And I'm really proud that we were able to do that as a company,
Let's put it this way. I will
really.
give you a number. I'll throw you a number.
Yeah.
You say 2,000
Yeah, per show.
per show. Okay. It cost me, for a one-day presentation with 2 days of rehearsal, cost me $10,000.
No, that's not what I'm saying. And that's
Yeah.
not that's what the subsidy was for every member.
But I'm saying that's what it cost me just for the theater. Just for the theater. This didn't account for paying the cast or anything else. It was just the theater.
What theater in New York City?
That was the Kaiser, the second stage theater.
It's a good.
Oh yeah,
Of
no,
course.
it was excellent. No, I don't regret doing it. But I'm just saying they have to know, especially writers, because you'll forgive me because I know most of the audience today are playwrights. So you'll forgive what I have to say. Most playwrights don't have an idea of what it costs to put something on. Their focus for the most part is on the work, the writing, and all the other little bells and whistles that have to go along with it. A lot of writers don't have a clue, and this is not to put anyone down. And I know a lot of you do know this, so please forgive me.
For a year.
But it's
Every- I-
important. But it's important that you're aware that there's a lot to it, because I know some writers, they go, "Oh, so much money! What? How?" Yeah, you have to know that there are certain parameters, and that's why it helps when you have a general manager to do a budget. People have heard me say this: the two most important people when you're producing a show is the general manager and a theatrical lawyer. Two most important people in your life. So
Well,
even if you're producing yourself.
In the creation process, it comes back to what Anne Bogart and other people have said from the beginning, which is nothing gets done unless you're in a company.
Yeah.
Because it's collaborative.
The other thing that I would definitely encourage, if at all possible, and it's worth it. I don't care if you say, "Oh, extra money," tape it, record it. So important now, more so than ever. I myself was a victim of non-recording on a reading that I did. Matter of fact, the one that I mentioned that I was at the Kaiser Theater, Equity came up with a number. I had a very large cast, and they hit me with a cost that was ridiculous. And I said, forget it. What I did do, and I should tell you to turn off the. Now it doesn't matter because I'm not on the show anymore. I had someone in the audience with their little camera, and they videotaped it surreptitiously, and we actually had some recording, but not what I normally would have had. And there were people of note in this community who were not able to be there. Do you have a recording? No. I was out of luck. And when I was planning to do a workshop, I made sure that I had a top-notch videographer, and I was going to pay extra for that. And I did work out something with Equity because you pay per what they do. You pay per performance. So if you record 2 performances, you're paying double what you would pay. So, and there are things around that which I will not get into here, but if anyone wants to know, they can contact me. I'll be happy to tell them. But that's some of the things you had to do. But yeah, if you can record it, by all means. But first, make sure that you have a good production to start with. That's of course that goes without saying. So
It's essential now. That's the biggest difference. You
Yeah.
have to have recording. Otherwise, it's, what is it? Penny wise, pound foolish.
Well,
Because-
even in my case, I'm able to now take a recording like Sammy's Follies. Sharon, who complained, by the way, she complained about what they charged because they streamed it and what they charged her for recording it. And I said, okay. And then I actually watched it going into the city on my phone. I watched on my phone, and it was done very well. It was not just one of these static cameras. That's the other thing. Don't do a static shot. My background is also video. I had a video company when everything was still film. I'm gonna date myself now. And it was done so well. This is why I was very impressed with it. And I can use that. I have people that are nowhere near here. They're in Florida. I have somebody else who's in the Midwest who wants to see it. I can send this to them, and guess what? They can watch it and say, "Oh yeah, this is good, perfect." So it helps. It helps with the selling of the show to take it to the next level, which is what you want to do. This is the evolution. You do the festival, and then from the festival, hopefully, you will then be able to garner enough interest to take it to the next level, which is usually, not always, usually a regional production. It can be off Broadway or off Broadway in New York, or it can be somewhere upstate New York, like Melissa did it, or down in Florida, that kind of thing. But that's part of the evolution of it and the progression.
Before Neal, I just want to touch on something that you said, which was important. And before I go to Patrick, because he's taking it across the pond to Europe, which is also critical. One of the
Yes.
things you had said was to try to get that essential tape, the video. It just adds to the expense. Everything is going up. People are going up. The cost of everything, as everybody knows, is going up. So for me in Create Theater, it's been essential to look for producing partners. So last year, Neal, you know, we do have a continuing 3-year residency program with SUNY Cortland upstate. They have a really, really good BFA in musical theater department, and they're looking for projects. So I have a relationship with them, and they are producing one new musical every year, and it's good. So we had the Bone Harp, that was our first partnership. So I know, Neal, you're now talking to the people with the Bone Harp. And so they got.
You gave me a great idea because that's a show that belongs across the pond.
Yes.
So
right.
I can talk to you and talk to Patrick about that also. Absolutely.
So I brought it down, but because it was developed up there, they did all the heavy lifting, and I just had to get the space down here and then pay, the musical director, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I find that that's really a great way to do it. So just today in Broadway World, I just announced this, which is now we want to do the same thing for plays with the co-production partnership with Prism Stage Company, which is a nonprofit here in New York. And their mission is to support the work of writers of age 40 and up, because creativity has no expiration. So if you look on the Create Theater /submissions, you'll see that we do have submissions open for this partnership, for the musical theater partnership, as well as for the residency with ETC, the Experts Theater Company, which is Neal's a member, Melissa's a member, and Patrick is on our advisory board. So if you want to check that out and hopefully apply, I'm really excited about the fact that these companies are going to give readings to more writers, right? We're just creating work, trying
Can I
to
answer?
create.
Susan, Susan just asked me a question about, would a producer sit and watch a 2-hour video? I will answer that very easily. Not necessarily. This goes back to having a good pitch and an opening to get their attention. But part of what you do when you get the video, but I should have said also have a trailer of some sort. It can be anywhere from 1 to maybe 10 minutes. I did for Dangerous, I had 2 videos. One was a 30-minute, one was a 10-minute. Show ran 2:40. And it was the highlights. It was just the highlights so when you're watching, you'll see if it's a musical, put a couple of the really big numbers in that are going to be, these are going to be the 11 o'clock numbers. Put in, if there's some great acting, you'll cut that. Yes, it will cost you some more money. I cannot emphasize enough. Do not chintz. Do not chintz. My father had a saying years ago, and it holds, cheap is dear, meaning you cut corners, it's going to cost you in the long run. Don't don't try to get your brother-in-law with his home little camera to do this. Get a professional in there. I've seen this happen, by the way. I was privy to a producer, an actual producer, and a show that was off Broadway. They brought in a friend to record the commercial. I watched them. I know video. I was helping them set up, and I watched them, and I knew this wasn't going to work. And unfortunately, I was right. The commercial, we saw the commercial, and to a person, it was a waste of money, and to try to save a few dollars, you blew everything. So
So-
it goes back to that. Yeah.
I think that's the biggest takeaway, that now everything is costing so much more. I used to say in 2020, well, I did say after the festival in 2022, I said my budgets are quadruple what they were pre-pandemic. Now they're 5 times what they were in 2019, and I'm embarrassed what we used to pay everyone. I want to move over to Patrick, because Patrick has an exciting new script. And so, Patrick,
And
why
look at
don't,
that face. Is that a face of excitement? I'm telling you.
go ahead, Patrick. I don't want to steal your thunder. Go ahead.
One of my ideas was to reunite popular music and theater music. In the 30s and 40s, they were the same thing. The songs that you heard on the radio were the same songs that were in Broadway shows. Now, and in the 60s, with rock and roll, the separation happened, and each group went its own separate way. Now, with hip hop being the dominant music in the popular culture, we're trying to unite that with theater. And the proof of concept is Hamilton. If you do it right, it will be enormously successful. So we established a company, and we went looking for people to do a script that we could start with. And we were approached by this guy named Master Ace, who is a legend in the hip hop community. Every major rapper in the world knows who he is, but he's not a big name in the general musical hip hop community. The consumers of it don't know really in the United States who he is, but the producers of hip hop do. And because his way of writing his albums, where he would incorporate scripts, what he called skits in there, and they'd be little vignettes of people acting out a story. And we thought he would be the best person to advance our idea. And Cate became the dramaturg for the show and spent 5 years working with him on the script, taking the stories he had and combining them into a script that followed theater structure. And then we were able to do, as part of the festival, a I forget the technical name of it, but it's Off-Broadway League Level 1 something or something workshop.
Off-Broadway Developmental Contract Level 1.
Okay. And we did a video of it, and the video is almost done and ready for titles. And so we're going to send that out. 3 of the major investors that we were counting on to fund it, hopefully the full budget. None of them could be at the reading, but because we have the video, we'll be able to send them the video. One of whom is in San Francisco, one of whom is on LA, I believe, and the 2 of them are in LA. LL Cool J and Rock the Bells is one of them, and they're really interested in it. So we hopefully we'll have the capital to do a full production in London. Our budget is $5 million, which is not quite what it would be if we were trying to do it on Broadway. It'd be more like 12 to 14 million if we were going to do it here. And so because of the less expensive productions in London, we decided to take it there. And the other reason we decided to take it there is, even though Master Ace is not a big name amongst the general hip hop listening audience, in Europe, he's a huge name. He sells out every time he performs there. And so that's why we're taking it to London. And hopefully in a year and a half, we will be in London, opening on the West End or off West End.
So let me just back up what Patrick just said. This video captures not just the staged reading, but it also captures all of the audience reactions, because they were really actively participating. You hear all the laughters, you hear the gasps, you hear, all of the audience reactions. And then at the end, that gratifying feeling, at the very end, people start clapping. And then when they jump up and give that resounding standing O that just makes your heart like stop, that's captured on the video. So hopefully they'll get to the end, but it was an amazing experience. So Master Ace had a dream of always wanting to write a musical, because on his albums, he put these skits in between. So his fans know all of these characters. And so it was very smart of him to want to actually codify it into a musical, especially, as Pat said, because of the music industry right now, the royalties. He could make a lot more than always exhausting himself by going out on the road and going internationally like he does, to actually have this vehicle with his music in it. So we work together every single week. I am so impressed with him as a writer and the diligence that he applies to his craft. Never wrote a play before, much less a musical, but he had this sense, and so after 5 years of meeting weekly, even when he was on tour, he now has this musical. And, it never, we did it on Zoom for readings, but it doesn't approximate, although Zoom is really helpful to develop that feeling when you actually get it up on the stage and you invite an audience in and they overwhelm you with their response. That's a moment. And that's what I think what we all live for as theater artists, to have that moment, to capture that moment. And we've got to capture it on video. So yay, we're going to use that one. So I think that pulls together the virtual development that Melissa spoke of onto an actual stage. It wasn't a festival. It was within the festival, just because I had contracted the use of the space for 30 weeks. So we were able to use that for the hip hop show for Rhymes Over Beats. But having it on stage, inviting an audience in is the only way you can judge if it's going to resonate. You can work all you want privately on the script, but until you invite that audience in. So to RK, yes, it did have a very happy ending. We found an investor almost immediately to have a workshop over across the pond outside of London. And we want to see whether it's going to work with the audience over there. So we tested it with a hip hop audience on a Thursday night. And then we tested it with a largely theater audience on Friday night, and it resonated both nights. So now we're going to test it and see if the UK thinks as much of it as we do. So we'll find out, right?
We had in the audience of people who absolutely loved the show was a person who's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as an early member of Public Enemy. We had the person who started Yo MTV Raps. So these people were OGs, to use the hip hop lingo, when it came to hip hop and rap, and they loved the show. And that's, if they loved it, other people are going to love it, we think.
But remember, it took 5 years to get there. Took 5 years. You got to put the work in, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think that we're done. We wrapped this up in a whole hour.
I'd like to add one thing to what you just said.
Okay.
Many years ago, Cate has heard the story from me. I was asked to speak to these elementary school kids on a career day about producing. And this one young girl, sixth grade, she asked me this question: what does it take to be a producer? And I thought for a second, and my answer was patience.
Yeah.
And anyone in this business who's a producer knows exactly what I'm talking about. This does not happen overnight, and that's another thing that many writers do not understand. And it takes them a while to understand. We're not, well, how come it's not happening? And they think that maybe we as producers are slacking off or we're not doing our job. No, the average show, I'll just give you an idea, and it's funny because it equates with film. For years, when a movie came to the screen, what you saw was something that was first pitched 7 to 10 years prior. And it's just coincidence, or maybe not, that a show that goes to Broadway, or even off Broadway, when you see it, it took at least 7 years to get it to that point. One show that I can mention offhand was Jagged Little Pill, which was directed by Diane Paulus, a multi-Tony winner, a major cast, music by Alanis Morissette. It was an excellent show. It worked up at ART in Cambridge. It took, with all the names, all the big names involved, it took almost 7 years to get to Broadway.
Yeah.
7 years. It's not like, well, because we've got a name, because we've got a name person, we have a famous person in the cast. No, it helps, but it takes time, and you must have patience.
And you also
have to throw that in there
to the audience. Thank you, Neal. But he and I met every single week for 5 years. That's why I say his diligence, and he was open. He writes hip hop. He writes rap. And I said from the beginning, there's no way that it's going to find success if it's nothing but hip hop. It's got to be a varied score. So we have R&B, we have some gospel. He's gone, above and beyond his comfort zone, which also I think is necessary. And here's the rub. Everybody says, oh, well, only a 3, 4, 5 person show will get produced. He's got 15 and we're producing it, so if the quality is there, it goes out the window because everyone's looking for excellence. So there's still hope. Your story needs what your story needs. So there, I just wanted to end on a success note, RK. So yay. And Jay, I think we're done. Did all of you have any, I guess, open up the room now, Jay? What do you do? Are you still there, Jay?
Yeah.
Jay's having dinner.
Do we have any questions here? Virtual hand raise?
No?
Nope. Oh, I just saw one. That was Eric Jones.
Hey there.
Hi, Eric.
How you doing? I think it's very inspirational because I'm kind of at the tail end of it. I just wanted to kind of know exactly that. When did you know that the piece was working? When you were working during all that dramaturgical moment, that that okay, this could actually work.
Well, I started getting some really excitement building when I started to hear the songs with the melodies, because when I can't get a song out of my head, that's usually a really, really good idea that this might be great, and then, I tested it with my kids. So that's always my litmus test. They like the music. So Yeah. So, but let me just also share, when I spoke with Ace after the fact, and I told him some of the things that people were saying, God bless him, he actually started to cry.
Mm.
And it just, for me, that means so much, because he deserves it. He absolutely deserves it. So.
Okay. Okay. Now I have to see this show.
They do say there's been a rule of thumb for years that in a musical, if the audience goes out and remembers one song, just one, you have a hit. Now, if you have more than one, that's even better. But that's, if you've got something that they remember, you have a bona fide hit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there you go. So get one that knocks it out of the park, and you're good to go.
Okay. Great.
Sorry.
All right,
wait,
next question, Michelle Rissy.
Oh, did
Sorry, Michelle, I accidentally muted you. Unmute
Okay.
us.
sorry, it was confusing. Okay, did you say applications are open for Create Theater?
For ETC. So Create Theater,
ETC.
we're offering workshops and classes and everything during the year, and I haven't announced those yet. But the residencies, yes, they're open, submit.
Okay, awesome. Thank
And
you.
it's free to submit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a play that I'm writing, and I think it would be great at the theater. However, I'm going to Alaska first, so it'd be great if it was like in
That's
2024.
exciting.
Yeah,
That's
thank
exciting.
you. Thank you.
There.
A course of sled dogs behind you.
I know Alaska's not the traditional route, but I'm excited to do it. Although 4 months of being cold, not so exciting.
Do what you gotta do.
Any other
And-
questions?
Great.
We covered everything.
Literally everything, Neal.
We must have been really good. I'm telling you, boy.
We're good. We're good.
I can make a joke at your expense, Neal, but
Of
I won't.
course. No, go ahead. Sure. Well,
As
but-
much as you
what-
talk, I'm sure you covered everything at one point.
No, actually, by the way, to everyone in the room, the fact that Cate and Patrick are doing this overseas, and a conversation that she and I had with Laura, with the author of Bone Harp, this is something that actually it resonated with me. Oh, you know what? That's an excellent idea. And so now I'm talking to people who have either done this already. I'm also going to be in touch. Patrick doesn't know it yet. I'm going to be bugging his ass about how things went, and be talking to Cate, because I want to see this happen. And so that's another thing. If a good producer is not afraid to ask questions, I'm not afraid to tell you when I don't know something, and I will, okay, let me learn something. This is how I've amassed this vast font of information that I'm known to be allegedly. I say allegedly, but yeah, that's something that's going on. Your mic is, I think, are you muted, or are you just not? I don't hear you, Cate. I know you're talking. I see the mouth moving. I don't hear you.
Because
Anyway,
you never would have known the Bone Harp if Laura and Heidi had
That's
never
right.
submitted to the SUNY Cortland.
correct. Yeah,
fellowship.
that's absolutely correct.
They would still be in Chicago trying to get it done in Chicago, and now they have a Broadway producer interested in it. So good on you, Neal.
It has to do a lot with networking. This goes back to networking. Never stop. There are two things that never end: writing the show until the day you open. You're always. And I go back to Eric. You say, when do you know if it's ready? it's never ready. You're always writing. Yeah, you get to a good point that it's perfect for a presentation, but you know what? You're always tweaking it. You're always revising until the moment that you open officially. But the networking part of it is so important. How I know Cate was because of networking. I'm a long member and a true board member, and in one of the workshops, I met this woman, Molly Morris, who's I call her a spark plug. She's amazing, and we became friends. And then she kind of wrangled me into, we have this great show we'd like to get you involved in. And I said, okay, and went to go see it. And I go up in the elevator with this woman who introduced herself as Cate Cammarata. And that's how we met. We did this show called My Life is a Musical. Okay,
Oh,
huh? My Life
No,
is a Musical. What,
yeah,
what?
no, go ahead and talk about, Pat was on that too. So talk about enhancements.
Yeah.
We have an enhancement price of about 650,000, I believe it was, out at Bay Street 10 years ago. Now
Yeah.
that same enhancement, you working at the same theater is like 2 million, right? Neal?
Again, don't ever be afraid to negotiate. That's something else. There are prices and there are prices. You can work around things. It doesn't mean, I don't mean, you don't have to do things on the cheap, but at the same time, don't be afraid to, if somebody says it's going to cost X amount, don't be afraid to counter and say, can you do better? Can you bring it down to this instead? Or my budget is a little bit less. Can you help? Can you work with me? Don't be afraid to do that. The worst thing they can say is no. But the idea is, one of the reasons that this is a little bit of bugaboo for me. RK may not agree with me, but one of the reasons that you see some of these ticket prices have gotten ridiculous on Broadway is because the producers do not negotiate. They go to the marketing people and they go to all the things, and this is what it's going to cost. Okay. And then they look at the budget and they say, oh my God, we're going to charge so much more than they should be charging. And how to get it back? Because we work on a model that's over 150 years old. And until someone comes up with to be able to add an extra day or two to the week, you only have 8 shows. And so what happens is, to make your money back, you have to raise the ticket prices, and it's gotten crazy. And I'm totally against that. That's a personal thing. Try to keep my budget lower, and you work with people. You work with them. The guy that I had who's going to do my video, he's amazing, and he came in at a price 2/3 less than this other guy who was also very good that we worked with before. So it pays to shop around a little bit. That's what I'm saying there. It's inflation, but yes or no. We could have that could be a whole another topic of discussion. But in any event, I just had to throw that in there. Don't be afraid to and it's like anything else. If you have a home and you need a plumber or an electrician or something, you don't take the first one that comes along. You get a couple of quotes. You do the same thing in theater. You talk to a few different people and get prices and work with them and see what you can get, and then take the best one. Not necessarily the least expensive, but that's it. Oh, excellent. I hope you enjoy Sidney, Susan.
Susan, did you have a question?
She just mentioned she's going to be seeing the sign in Brustein's window. So
Oh, Susan,
that makes me happy, But yeah, we're sorry that it's going to be closing on Sunday, but that's a whole nother story. Well, it was a limited run. It was scheduled as a limited run. We had hoped that because of the writer's strike, it could be extended because both Rachel and Oscar had commitments, which with the writer's strike kind of made a moot point. But it turned out no, they still had to be. We had to close when we scheduled it to close. So that was the reason for that.
Susan, did you have a question?
Yes, Suzanne Crawford, not going to Sydney.
Oh, not going. Okay.
I'm
The
a
other
different,
Susan, the
I have a
different Susan.
a different Susan.
Yeah.
So Cate, earlier you said to try to work with companies in getting workshops going or moving musicals along. So I wonder, does CTE or any of the entities you work with, do you have companies of actors in place, or does each production come up with its own new cast from wherever?
So because we've been doing this for a while, we do have a fan club of actors who definitely join in with us when they can, you know. I don't know if that completely answers your question. And, you know, we do work with many different actors who love to come back because it's all about the work and we value their input. There's nothing like a talented actor to add to the script, their insights. So no acting company per se, we just have fans of actors that will jump in with us.
Okay, because similarly, I've worked with actors now who, if they were available, I'd still want to work with for certain parts. So that was why I asked.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
As you go along, you will find, first of all, in terms of the Broadway or the theater community, at least in New York, is an extremely, extremely small one. So everybody gets to know everybody, if not directly within 1 or 2 degrees. And as you go along, you will add, just like you're doing now, Susan, you will add to your coterie of actors, directors, people that you will cross paths with. This again goes back to what I said about networking. Very important to network, even as a writer, to get to know people. They may not be able to do anything with you at that moment. They may not be able to help you at all, but you never know who you're talking to. At the very least, they may know somebody who can help. So you talk to everybody.
That's why I'm here.
Exactly. This is why I became a member of TRU way back when. It was
Right.
phenomenal because you got to meet people at a much higher level. It wasn't just people doing things, you know, and I'm not knocking this at off Broadway. There were people who have been on Broadway, who have won Tonys, who have done these things. And it wasn't like, okay, they're up on a stage, they talk, and then they leave. You got to meet them. Again, this is pre-pandemic, where you're in the room, and after everything was over, you got to speak with them. And in some cases, you exchange cards. You really got to know them. And this was so important and so different than many of the organizations. Not to tout, you know, TRU, but that was one of the big things that I always liked about TRU. It was a great place to network, and I tell anyone who is starting out in the business, who's kind of been there a little bit, but not quite, can't get traction yet, check out TRU if you haven't heard about it. It's a great place. It's a great starting place, and even a great place to pick up ideas and that type of thing. So, and by the way,
So-
it's less expensive than was it CTI? We teach some of the same things and at a much less expensive price. So there you go.
So ETC is a little different than TRU.
Yes.
But we still offer one-on-one individual coaching on producing, on writing. We offer writers groups. Dramaturgy is included with it, the Zoom readings. We subsidize readings in person. And our doors are open until September 15th for ETC. If you want to get your submission in for the partnerships, that will close on August 1st. So go to the submission page, Create Theater /submissions, and read all about it. And just email me here if you have any questions. It's Cate at Create Theater with an ER.com. And I'd be happy to answer any question. Thank you, GW. GW is a member. So, yep. All right, I guess there's no more questions then, Jay. I'm gonna have to run as well, and I'm sure all of you have dinner plans. And this was great. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Jay, take it away.
All right,
Thank you,
everyone.
Pat.
Well, thank you so much for coming. And as Bob very often says, you know, we do this for free, but we definitely love any and all support. So if you are so inclined, please consider donating to TRU at trudonate.org. I'm also going to post the direct link into the chat. And, you know, if you're new to us and are a guest, please email us and say you'd like to be on our mailing list. We'll happily put you on there. All right. So that is it for today's community gathering. Thank you so much, Cate. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Neal. Thank you, Patrick. Love you all, and you've all been wonderful.